I'm Delpha-Medic, PTSD on the front lines. I am Steve Wilton. I'm your host. Welcome to my video podcast show. This is a show where we discuss the challenging issues and topics surrounding post-traumatic stress disorder and the stigma that accompanies this very difficult topic. I'm not a physician. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. Not a psychologist. I don't claim to be one. I am a paramedic. I am a first responder with 25 years of overall experience. I've been impacted personally by post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm in the point of recovering. What I share with you here in my video blog or on my regular blog at www.delpha-medic.com is my own personal experiences, strength, and hope. It is research and things that I have learned along the way as I've continued to try, improve, and recover from post-traumatic stress disorder. Any suggestions, anything that I share and express with you is my own experiences. As I said, I implore you to speak to your professional counsel for your physicianal team to discuss anything that you might have heard here before you make any changes. We started yesterday with talking about sex and PTSD. It's going to be a 4-part segment, and I want to just do a really quick recap of what yesterday's video was about. Yesterday we talked about sexual dysfunction and the categories and causes, as well as we talked about the important connection between sex and PTSD, and an overall general discussion of how important that PTSD and sex is together. It tends to be one of the things that seems to be left out in our psychological, physiological continuum with our primary caregivers. At least that's my experiences. Let's talk today about things that go and neurotransmitters of sex, love, and commitment. What I want to just briefly talk about is a couple simple neurotransmitters that are within our own bodies, obviously. One is called oxytocin. A lot of people think of oxytocin as being a female hormone. As a matter of fact, it's actually both male and female, but more prominent in females. It's known and called a commitment drug. It's a neuromodulator that produces a calm, warm mode and increases the tender feelings and attachments and helps us to lower our guard with our significant others. There has been some studies in animals and some ongoing studies within humans that suggest that it helps us to commit and become more devoted to our families. Like I said, it produces a very warm, calming mode for us to live in. It is triggered quite often in mammals when we connect with our lovers and when we orgasm. It's both released in both male and female, and that's kind of that warm, kind of high-ish, connected, close feeling you feel sometimes after you spend a quality period of time with your loved one and you have a sexual event. Another one I'm going to talk briefly about is called dopamine. It has a lot of different functions, but two things I just want to make a comment about. It induces excitement and it triggers sexual arousal. So dopamine and oxytocin are extremely important. I want to get down to talk about what we can do as patients, because really at this point, I mean, we can go to our doctors and say fix us, but we really are truly ultimately responsible. A couple things I want to bring up with when we talk about sexual dysfunction is we got to have this honest, open talk with our physicians. We need to discuss the options out there as far as medications, because there's some really good medications that treat PTSD and depression and anxiety, and then there's some medications that have a lot of side effects with those meds and impact on our sexual functions. Some medications can actually block our sexual desire and performance, and those are drugs that you need to discuss with your primary care physician. SSRIs, SNRIs are the types of drugs that we have to do with uptakes of serotonin and other neurotransmitters like dopamine. Like I was saying, we've got to really have an open dialogue with our physicians and talk about sex. And I'm not sure about you, but some of my care team never really discussed what that discussion. They just said, you take these pills, they're going to help your mood and help you so on and so forth. But we never really discussed that as to, yeah, it's going to cause you a problem with your sex, but that's as far as it went. To be honest with you, I think recovery is, we have to absolutely take care of our bodies and our brains regarding the neurotransmitters that are low. And we need to take medications to keep them up. But we also have to work at taking care of the physical, the spiritual, and the psychological all together. And with that having impacted in our sex lives, that's a huge thing for a bunch of different reasons. A couple things I came across really quickly. One was a scale. It's called the Arizona Sexual Experience Scale. It's researchable on the internet, and another one called a Sexual Functioning Questionnaire. It seems like they use these two questionnaires down in the States. I'm not sure whether they use them up here, and it kind of gives people a baseline as to when they start their treatment and further into their treatment as to how they are physically doing in relations to the medications that they're taking. I absolutely implore you that we have to make sure we take our medications to become stable and healthy, and then we can work on doing everything else. But there are good and not so good medications out there that can help our minds, but also not impact us sexually. You need to speak to your physician about those drugs. A couple things that I want to talk about is counseling, and not only counseling for ourselves, but counseling as a couple is really important. And it can be done in a couple different avenues. It can be done as counseling for PTSD, and maybe talk about sex during that counseling, or you can go to a special sex therapist, whatever works for you. But I implore counseling as a couple is really important because of the fact that a lot of our couples, our partners, don't necessarily know exactly what's going on with us. When we get confronted with erectile dysfunction or sexual dysfunction, we need to really uncover the psychological cause or causes. That is really the most important thing. I mean, we can band-aid it with certain drugs that cause us not to have problems with erections, but if we don't get to the root cause and really explore this with our psychiatrists, psychologists, physicians, and our partners, it really, at the end of the day, we have to fix more than just plumbing. And that's important. We want to make sure that we get to the root problems. Stress reduction in PTSD and has a huge impact in sexual functioning. One of the more important things that we talked about, commitment and connection with our partners, and so far the first two segments, we need to really learn how to practice being focused and being with our partner, and really openly, honestly talking about these issues with our significant other. Communication is a huge part of this, even though it might be challenging. Tomorrow we're going to go into part 3 of the series, and we're going to actually talk about practical tips when sex becomes a barrier with PTSD. I hope you folks have a fantastic 24 hours. Please feel free to leave any comments in the blog, any suggestions for other topics, and any feedback. I learned from your suggestions and exposure and your own journey. Have a great day, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.